Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one.
Fort Bourtange, Netherlands. Built in 1593 during the 80 Years' War, this star-shaped fortress withstood centuries of conflict. Seen from above, it looks like a geometric jewel. Seen up close, it was a deadly trap. The art of war transformed into architecture. They were considered enemies within their own country. Japanese Americans whose families suffered in internment camps while they bled for the flag. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team earned 21 Medals of Honor and more than 4,000 Purple Hearts. The most decorated unit of the war, proving loyalty with blood. 1996. Ukraine surrenders its nuclear weapons to Russia in exchange for a guarantee, never to be threatened or invaded. The Budapest Memorandum promised security and stability. 26 years later, Russian tanks would cross the Ukrainian border. Promises between nations are worth the paper they are written on. Sometimes, not even that. Papua New Guinea, 1942. The Australians called them fuzzy wuzzy angels. Angels with curly hair. Natives who carried wounded soldiers through impenetrable jungles, saving lives without asking for anything in return. No uniform, no medals, no recognition. Forgotten heroes of a war that was not theirs. Huntington Beach, California, 1928. Oil derricks sprout like mushrooms during the black gold boom. Where there was once beach, now there was fortune gushing from the ground. The American dream smelled like oil. The landscape would never be the same, nor the destiny of the city. Japan, 1954. Marilyn Monroe visits a wounded American soldier evacuated from the Korean War. The glamour of Hollywood meets the horror of war. She came to entertain the troops and found men destroyed by combat, the most famous smile in the world facing the cruelest face of reality. Mary Vincent was 15 years old when a man attacked her while she was hitchhiking in California in 1978. He brutally assaulted her and chopped off both her forearms with a hatchet. He threw her into a ravine to die. But Mary did not die. She walked to a road and survived. She testified against her attacker and rebuilt her life. New York, 1903. The faces of these boys tell a story no child should live. Their own aunt, legal guardian, and next heir to their estate, beat them brutally. One had his scalp split open for asking for a bandage. Justice only came when the Protection Society intervened. This image freezes a dark moment in American history. Members of the German-American Bund display swastikas alongside United States flags, promoting Nazi ideals before America entered the war. In the 1930s, Nazism had sympathizers on American soil, organized, uniformed, and marching. Queen Victoria and Abdul Karim, her young Indian attendant, cultivated a friendship that scandalized the entire court. She treated him almost like a son. He taught her Urdu. When the Queen died, the royal family expelled him from the house she had given him and deported him to India. They tried to erase him from history for decades. 2000s. The golden age of LAN parties. In basements and rooms around the world, people carried their enormous computers to play together. Before fast internet, the only way to compete was to be in the same place. An entire generation connected through network cables and sleepless nights. Paris, 1956. Women detained inside a police vehicle during an operation against prostitution. While some try to stay calm, one of them stares at the camera with her tongue out. Even in defeat, a final gesture of defiance. Dignity is not easily imprisoned. England, 1980s. A woman dances on the table at a London high society party, lifting her dress without shame. It was Thatcher's era, a time of quick fortunes and limitless ostentation. While the industrial north sank, the city of London celebrated. The excess of a decade that promised wealth for all but delivered it to few. Oregon, 1939. Thomas Cave tattooed his own Social Security number on his arm, his only form of identity during the Great Depression. Unemployed and without prospects, he went to pick beans with his wife. Desperation engraved on the skin. Millions lived like this in the 1930s. You are looking at the oldest toy ever found. Dated between 5500 and 3000 before Christ, this object rests in the Mard Museum in Turkey. 7,000 years ago, a child played with it. The need to play is as old as humanity itself. March 8th, 1971. Joe Frazier has just knocked down Muhammad Ali in the 11th round of the fight of the century. Returning to his corner, he does not celebrate. He can barely stand. He won, but Ali almost destroyed him in the process. 15 rounds that changed boxing. Neither of them would be the same after that night in New York. Pueblo, Colorado, 1905. Horses jump from towers into pools from heights of up to 60 feet. Horse diving was popular entertainment at the time. Packed audiences applauded while terrified animals plummeted. Born from violence against an enslaved girl of 13 years by her 40-year-old master. This is how Amanda America Dixon came into the world, but she rewrote her destiny. When her father died, he left her his entire fortune, making her one of the wealthiest women in Georgia, an inheritance that defied everything the South believed about blood and race. Around 1900, a biracial family poses for a portrait at a time when their very existence was considered scandalous. Interracial marriages were prohibited in much of the United States. This photo is an act of courage, existing despite everything. March 21st, 1947. The New York police receive a report about a strong odor. Upon entering the house at 2078 Fifth Avenue, they find piles of garbage from floor to ceiling and the bodies of the Collier brothers. Homer and Langley lived as recluses for decades, accumulating more than 140 tons of objects. Traps created by Langley to protect his blind brother ended up killing him. Homer died of starvation days later. The case defined compulsive hoarding for medicine. Joe Arity was called the happiest prisoner on death row. With an IQ of 46, he did not understand his fate. In 1939, before entering the gas chamber, he gave his toy trains to another inmate. He asked for ice cream as his last meal. 6 decades later, he was exonerated. Justice came too late. If I fail, he dies. The phrase on the poster summarizes the Spanish flu pandemic. In 1918, Red Cross volunteers sew masks to contain a virus that would kill more than 50 million people worldwide. Without vaccines, without treatment, humanity depended on hygiene, isolation, and collective work. Wall Street, 1918. Charlie Chaplin celebrates victory over Imperial Germany. The most famous tramp in cinema raises his arms in the financial heart of the world. The Great War was over. 20 years later, another would begin, and Chaplin would satirize a new mustachioed tyrant in The Great Dictator. United States, 1923. Law enforcement agents confiscate barrels of smuggled liquor during a raid. Prohibition was in effect from 1920 to 1933. 13 years of a law that did not end the thirst, only pushed it into illegality. Organized crime had never profited so much. Berlin, 2002. Michael Jackson appears on a hotel balcony holding his baby outside the railing, with only one arm, covering the child's face with a cloth. Fans scream in shock below. The scene spread through world media as proof that something was very wrong with the king of pop. The genius who revolutionized music seemed incapable of recognizing basic dangers. She was born a princess, but fate reserved for her a label that society wanted to hide. In 1915, Alexandrine Irene of Prussia came into the world with Down syndrome. At that time, noble families hid different children, but her parents loved her publicly, defying all the prejudice of a cruel era. Washington, 1952. A witness testifies under a sheet to hide their identity. The trial involved drug trafficking, and the risk of retaliation was real. Justice blindfolded. Literally, sometimes the only way to tell the truth is to hide the face of the one telling it. Freddie Mercury left most of his estate to marry Austin, the woman he called the love of his life, even though he was gay. In his will he wrote, "If things had been different, she would have been my wife, and all of this would have been hers anyway." They loved each other in a way that few understand. She cared for him until the end. She keeps his ashes in a secret location to this day. Some loves do not fit into definitions. They simply exist. Ramla Prison, Israel, 1961. The man walking through the courtyard is Adolf Eichmann, the bureaucrat who organized the transport of millions of Jews to the gas chambers. He planned genocide with the coldness of someone scheduling meetings. In a few months, he would be hanged. Minnesota, 1918. John Meintz, a German-American farmer, shows the marks of the attack he suffered. Residents of Luverne covered him with tar and feathers for being of German origin. Anti-German hysteria turned neighbors into lynchers. Americans attacking Americans in the name of patriotism. Drenthe, Netherlands, 1936. A family poses proudly in front of their house, made of grass and peat. Simple dwelling, hard life, dignity intact. Decades before the Netherlands became a symbol of prosperity, its peasants built homes with what the land offered. A lumberjack fits inside the cut of a millennia-old sequoia. It seems crazy, and it frequently was fatal. In the early 20th century, workplace safety meant being lucky. Trees thousands of years old fell in minutes, some men along with them. It was the price of progress. Japan, late 19th century. A squad of samurai poses for the camera, already knowing their world is ending. The era of warriors was giving way to the era of machines. In a few decades, swords would be relics and Bushido would be nostalgia. Coast of Korea during the war. 3 Korean communists surrender in a fishing boat. Men who minutes before were enemies now raise their hands. War divides countries, families, and ideologies. But in this moment, they're just 3 tired men wanting to survive. Beijing, 1958. Chinese people at the Summer Palace scare away sparrows as part of Mao's 4 Pests campaign. The plan was to exterminate rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. It worked too well. The birds almost disappeared. Without them to eat insects, the crops were devastated. Millions would die of hunger. Coast of the Chukchi Sea, 1976. Russian explorer Nikolai Machulyk feeds a polar bear and her cubs. An unlikely moment of trust between predator and human. In the Soviet Arctic, where nature usually killed without mercy, this scene seems from another world. Colorado, April 20th, 1999. Dustin Gorton, a Columbine High School student, breaks down upon discovering that the shooters were his own friends. 13 dead, a country in shock, and a student who will have to live with the question that will never have an answer. How did he not notice anything? Vietnam, 1968. In the heat of the Tet Offensive, an American Army chaplain helps an elderly Vietnamese woman reach safety. Amid the chaos of a senseless war, a moment of humanity. The military uniform and civilian frailty, the war summarized in a single image. Rio de Janeiro, years of the Brazilian military dictatorship. A protester falls while police chase him through the streets. The image captures the brutal repression of the student and popular movements that dared to confront the authoritarian regime. Iran, 1925. Reza Shah Pahlavi, seated on the Imperial throne after his coronation. The military officer who overthrew the old dynasty and made himself king. He founded a lineage that would rule Iran for decades, until his son was overthrown by the revolution of 1979. 1990s. The legendary Soviet water polo player Petr Mshveniradze with his grandson. The Georgian giant who terrorized opponents in Olympic pools now tenderly holds the new generation. Champions also grow old, but the stories they tell their grandchildren last forever. Zanzibar, 1896. Chained slaves wait under the watch of a guard in the service of British power. The same empire that had abolished slavery at home still profited from it in the colonies. Iron chains, empty stairs, European civilization in all its hypocrisy photographed. The HMS Vidal rides the crest of a monstrous wave during World War II, 1940. Navigating the North Atlantic meant facing storms that swallowed entire ships. The war against German submarines was only half the battle. The other half was against the ocean itself. Devil's Island, French Guiana. Prisoners participate in a bizarre race rolling inside barrels. The penal colony was famous for its brutal conditions and nearly impossible escapes. Kentucky, 1946. Dillard Eldridge and his children in the kitchen of a 4-room house. They pay $9 in rent. The Belva coal mine was abandoned after it exploded. What remained were families like this one, trapped in 20-year-old houses, waiting for jobs that would never return. Everest, 1996. Seaborn Beck Weathers was declared dead twice, abandoned by the team and then by the rescuers. But he woke up. In the freezing darkness, nearly blind, he got up and walked back to camp. His face was destroyed by the cold. His hands would be amputated, but he came back. Hamburg, 1963. Protesters lie on the sidewalks, simulating protection against nuclear attack using backpacks as shields. The Cold War turned the apocalypse into an everyday possibility. Entire generations grew up training for the end of the world. Atomic fear had a face, and it lived next door. Western Front, World War I. Soldiers test an observation post camouflaged as a fake tree. From the trenches that ran from the English Channel to Switzerland, men spied on the enemy disguised as landscape. The war created macabre innovations. This one seems absurd, but it saved many lives. August 3rd, 1970. The first interracial marriage legally registered in Mississippi. 3 years earlier, this was a crime. The couple looks at the camera, knowing they crossed a line that many still wanted impassable. The law changed. The looks of hatred, not so much. Haiti, 1960s. Political opponents tied to posts on the beach, awaiting execution by soldiers of the regime of François Papa-Doc Duvalier. Between 1957 and 1971, the dictator used the Tonton Macoute militia to eliminate any opposition. The executions were public, theater of terror to keep the people silent. It is estimated that more than 30,000 people died under his government. This image is one of the few records of one of the bloodiest dictatorships in the Americas. Pennsylvania, August 30th, 1963. White teenagers scream furiously at the arrival of the Baker family, the first black family to move to Del Mar. Young faces deformed by hatred, an entire neighborhood united to expel them. But the Bakers stayed. History would prove who was on the right side. London, 1936. Jesse Owens has just humiliated Nazi ideology. 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics. The black man who destroyed the myth of Aryan supremacy in front of Hitler. Back in England, he is celebrated as a hero. In the United States, he still could not enter through the front door. Sweden, 1918. Mother and daughter walk through the fields collecting what was left after another's harvest. They called it gleaning, the right of the poor to gather leftovers. Even in countries that called themselves prosperous, hunger punished. Before Alan Turing, it was Polish mathematicians who paved the way to decipher the Nazi enigma. Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rosicki, and Henryk Zygalski broke the code years before the British. Their achievements were essential to the Allied victory, but remained forgotten for decades. Okinawa, 1945. Japanese child soldiers from the Taketsu Kinotais are interviewed after the surrender. Teenagers armed with spears and grenades sent to die against American tanks. Imperial Japan sacrificed its youth on the altar of a lost cause. The looks say more than words. South coast of England, 1962. The last man is rescued from a shipwrecked trawler. Giant waves, cutting winds, a fight against the sea that lasted hours. For every fisherman saved, many others were swallowed by the icy waters. The ocean charges its price in human lives. Amazon, Brazil, March 10th, 2008. Mani Sater, Indigenous woman 5 months pregnant, faces police officers with her 1-year-old son in her arms. The Satere Mau tribe resisted eviction from a piece of land on the outskirts of Manaus. 400 people against the state. The courage of a mother protecting her land and her family. Houston, 1955. Ella Fitzgerald, on the right, and Georgiana Henry wait at the police station after being arrested for singing to an audience where black and white people sat together. That night, the Queen of Jazz was handcuffed for believing that music knows no skin color. Hejaz Railway. An Ottoman supply train remains exactly where it was ambushed by Lawrence of Arabia more than a century ago. The desert preserved the wreckage like an open-air museum. Time freezes in strange ways. Sometimes history simply does not move. Uncle Fed was born in 1792 and died in 1907 at 114 years old. He crossed 3 centuries. He saw the Industrial Revolution transform the world, witnessed the end of slavery, watched humanity trade oil lamps for electric poles. When he was born, Napoleon had not yet invaded Russia. When he died, the airplane already existed. London, around 1910. 2 policemen hold a suffragette detained in a park. She seems calm, almost defiant. Women who dared to demand the right to vote were treated like criminals, arrested, force-fed, publicly humiliated. But they did not stop until they won. Paris, 1910. The streets transformed into canals worthy of Venice during the Great Flood. The Seine rose more than 26 feet, invading museums, subways, and homes. Parisians navigated where they once walked. The city of light became a city of water. It took months to dry. Around 1915, Field Marshal August von Mackensen, one of Germany's most successful commanders in World War I. His hussar cap with the skull was not costume. It was Prussian military tradition. Death as a symbol of honor. A man from another era fighting the first modern war. New York, 1953. Subway passengers travel without their newspapers during the strike that paralyzed the press for 11 days. Labor disputes between typographers' unions left millions without news. Normally, New Yorkers read during the commute. Now the cars were strangely silent. Turkey, 1925. Ataturk bans the traditional Ottoman hat. He wanted to erase the Eastern identity and westernize the country by force. The hat law required everyone to wear European styles. Disobeying meant prison. An entire country changed its head, literally overnight. Oklahoma, 1936. A family of farmers carries what remains of their lives during the Dust Bowl. Dust storms tore away crops, houses, and hopes. Thousands migrated west in search of something better. They fled from the land that betrayed them, not knowing that California would also have its cruelties. 1942. This American propaganda encourages car sharing during the war. The message is direct. Driving alone wastes fuel and helps Hitler. Every drop of gasoline saved was a bullet against the enemy. The war effort started in the driver's seat. Germany, 1976. Joachim Kroll reenacts his crimes for the police. The cannibal of Duisburg was discovered when parts of a victim clogged the building's plumbing. For years, neighbors thought he was just a quiet man. Evil hides in the most common places. 1945. The war in Europe is over. These American nurses sunbathed next to an anti-aircraft gun on the ship, taking them back home. Months earlier, they operated on soldiers under bombardment. Now, finally, a moment of peace on the waves of the Atlantic. Anchorage, Alaska, March 27, 1964. The strongest earthquake ever recorded in the United States, magnitude 9.2, tore through the city. Streets opened like wounds, cars hang over chasms, buildings collapsed. 4.5 minutes of absolute destruction. Tsunamis devastated coastal communities. More than 130 people died. Nature reminded humans who really commands this planet. Some fractures in the ground remain visible to this day. Los Angeles, 1948. Women trainees from the LAPD practice shooting with their newly received revolvers. At a time when the police was a male domain, they paved the way. Every bullet on the target was an affirmation. We are here, we are capable, we are not going away. Pioneers in uniform. London, June 1940. Nazi bombs fall on the city, and in the middle of the rubble, the British do what the British do. They drink tea. Nothing that a cup cannot make more bearable. The unofficial motto of the Blitz. The world was crumbling, but tea time continued. Greenland, 1912. Einar Mikkelsen, after 2.5 years trapped in the ice with his companion, Ivar Iverson. Extreme isolation, hunger, hallucinations, and the endless wait for rescue that seemed never to come. When they were finally saved, they barely looked human. Polar exploration demanded a price that few could imagine. They paid it and survived. December 14th, 1911. Roald Amundsen plants the Norwegian flag at the South Pole, winning the race against the British by 5 weeks. Robert Scott would also arrive, but would die on the way back. The difference between eternal glory and forgotten tragedy? A few weeks of planning and a bit of luck. Tulsa, 1921. Black smoke engulfs the Greenwood district. The neighborhood known as Black Wall Street, aerial view of the massacre in progress. White mobs set fire to the prosperous black district, destroying more than 35 blocks. Hundreds died. A massacre that history books tried to hide for decades. Saul C. Korn spent decades testing cigarettes as a tobacco industry executive. It was his job. to smoke and evaluate from the 1920s to the 1960s. He inhaled thousands of them. He died at 70. The irony? The industry he helped build had known the risks for a long time. He apparently did not. Bombay, 1958. This 12-year-old boy named Farrokh Bulsara does not yet know he will become a legend. Decades later, the world will know him as Freddie Mercury, the voice that defined a generation and defied all conventions. The star was already shining, waiting for its moment. Paris, 1957. Yves Saint Laurent, at 21 years old, at the funeral of Christian Dior, the genius who had just inherited the throne of French fashion. No one suspected that the shy young man would revolutionize the female wardrobe and create an empire. The history of fashion changed hands on that rainy day. North Dakota, 1966. The Great Blizzard devastated the state with a fury that residents would never forget. Deadly temperatures, winds that cut like razors, snow that buried entire towns. Farms disappeared under yards of white. People died a few steps from their doors, unable to find the way home. The nature of the American Midwest, showing why it deserves respect and fear. Amsterdam, May 1960. Otto Frank revisits the entrance to the attic where his family hid for 2 years. His wife, his daughters, Anne and Margot, all died in the camps. He survived alone. 15 years later, he still returned to that place. Some doors never truly close. This is the face of Gavrilo Princip, the man whose finger on the trigger changed the 20th century. On June 28, 1914, the young Serbian nationalist of only 19 years assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, a single shot that triggered World War I and sealed the fate of millions. Tehran, 1979. Iran boils in revolution. This young woman walks through the streets distributing manifestos against the Shah's regime. Every paper delivered is a risk of imprisonment, or worse. In a few months, the rain would fall, but no one knew that what would come would be a regime of even worse oppression. Magnitogorsk, Russia, 1979. The rear memorial rises in bronze and granite, a tribute to the factory workers who forged the weapons of Soviet victory. While soldiers died at the front, workers died of exhaustion in the steel mills. The war was won on 2 fronts. England, 1945. Pilots from the British Air Transport Auxiliary. Women recruited to transport military aircraft from factories to airfields. They flew Spitfires and Hurricanes without radio or armament. If the engine failed, they were on their own. Heroines of the air that history almost forgot. Panama City, 1990. American paratroopers train on the outskirts during the invasion that overthrew Noriega. Operation Just Cause lasted weeks and left hundreds dead. For Washington, a quick victory. For the Panamanians who lost family members in the bombings, a wound that still bleeds. 1940. Ronald Reagan, a 29-year-old actor, poses for a sculpture class. He was chosen as a model of the ideal male physique. 40 years later, this same body would be in the White House commanding the greatest power in the world. Hollywood and politics have always been closer than we admit. 1940s. After Pearl Harbor, any Asian face was a target. This Chinese American carries a note on his chest. I am Chinese, not Japanese. It was the only way to work without being attacked. When fear dominates a nation, neighbors become enemies. Fort Corcoran. A priest celebrates Mass for soldiers of the New York State Militia. Faith as the last comfort before battle. Many there prayed for the last time. The American Civil War would kill more than 600,000, more than all other American wars combined. Mississippi, 1955. The Platt family had light skin and considered themselves white, until a sheriff decided otherwise. With a stroke of a pen, they were reclassified as black. They lost rights, property, and dignity overnight. In a South where a drop of blood defined destinies, the pen was a weapon. Serbia, 1914. A soldier sleeps embraced with his father who came to visit him on the front line. In a few weeks, the Great War would turn Europe into a cemetery. This moment of tenderness between father and son would be one of the last. The photograph captured love before the war swallowed it. While World War II shook the world, these women wore the American uniform. Black, women, soldiers. They faced two enemies, Nazism overseas and racism at home. They fought for a country that still did not recognize them as equals. Cologne, March 1945. American soldiers hold mass in the ruins of the bombed cathedral, the improvised altar among piles of rubble. Faith persists where civilization collapsed. In a few weeks, Germany would surrender, but first, a prayer among the stones. Derry, Northern Ireland, 1972. An Irish girl laughs at a British soldier, mocking his height. The scene seems comical, a child defying the armed occupier. The group Ku Klux Kitties, children dressed as KKK members. Hatred being taught from childhood, passed down from generation to generation as a cursed inheritance. Innocent faces under hoods of terror. A disturbing reminder that racism is not born in people, it is planted in them. Germany, 1955. A crowd of relatives holds up signs with names of soldiers missing in Soviet camps. In the center, a German mother cries upon discovering the fate of her son. 10 years after the war, thousands still sought news of prisoners who might never return. October 1922. Einstein and his wife Elsa embark for the Far East. In Japan, thousands waited in the street just to see them wave from the hotel balcony. The man who wanted to decipher the secrets of the universe had become a global celebrity, something he himself never fully understood. September 11th, 2001. The aide whispers in President George Bush's ear, "America is under attack." Bush was reading to children in an elementary school. His face freezes. The weight of the moment, planes hitting the Twin Towers, thousands dying, falls on his shoulders in front of a first-grade class. The world would change forever in the following minutes. New Orleans, 1864. These children appear white, but by law they were slaves. A single drop of black blood was enough. Harper's Weekly published their faces to shock the North. How can you enslave someone who looks just like you? The one-drop rule revealed the lie at the heart of American slavery. June 3rd, 1902, 9:20 p.m. A lightning bolt cuts through the Paris sky and strikes the Eiffel Tower. This is one of the first urban lightning photographs ever recorded. The tower functions as a natural lightning rod and is struck about 5 times a year. Idaho, 1940. A man balances on hundreds of logs floating downstream toward the sawmill. This is how it worked. Wet wood, strong current, one wrong step. The river that brought wealth to the cities also took lives. The profession of men who bet every day against death.